But I'm here to introduce Lorena Fernandez. She's a Ready program graduate. I thought she was a sophomore, but she's a junior now at Granada High School. I don't know how that happened. She just recently, at the end of the school year, helped out with one of our field trips and mentioned that she had written a talk for her speech class, or for final speech, and asked me to take a look at it. I took a look at it and I was blown away, and I sent it to Kathy. By the way, she got an A on the speech, and you're going to hear it now.
Thank you. So let's speak a little bit about immigrants. I'm sorry, thank you.
Make sure everybody.
All of us have a story. If you think about it, absolutely no legal or illegal immigrant has the same background story. Everyone lives and tells their life story differently. Whether you're Hispanic, American, Asian, or Canadian, we are all people. Imagine if you couldn't get into the United States to seek asylum. Like many from Honduras and Guatemala are living right through this second. These poor illegal immigrants are fleeing from wars, poverty, drug cartels, and the most powerful gangs in Latin America. They just can't step into the United States with legal permission, but enter after walking for weeks in desert, using unsafe underground tunnels, and hiding in cars and trains to slip by the borderline. These immigrants are filling the jobs that no one else seems to want. In return, they're being paid under the minimum wage. Many deserve asylum here in the United States because if they do return to their home country, they will probably be killed. Many kids want to work and are proven to become good citizens. In the past month, nearly 200 migrants, many traveling with children, decided to apply for protection in the nation's busiest border crossing after fleeing violence in their home countries of Honduras and Guatemala. In a New Times report, Wendy Garcia says she's confident that she'll be released if her assignment case wins its way through courts because she's traveling alone at age 36 with her 2-year-old son who has been sick. She told officials, "All I want is a place where I can work and raise my son." She said police in her hometown of Honduras jailed her for protesting construction into a hydroelectric plant and that she received death threats after being released. Neri Fernandez, of 24, said that in his hometown of San Pedro, Honduras, threatened him to kill him and his family if he did not sell drugs. He attended to seek asylum with his wife and his baby daughter, who was born in a journey through Mexico. Many migrants bring children in hopes of a better life for them. With free education, a sanctuary home and country they can be proud to call their own. Those that don't get their case accepted for asylum would have to gotten the same benefits if they had to cross the border illegally, but they could have continuously lived in fear of discovery. Although to many, it doesn't seem fair for illegal immigrants to get the benefits they don't deserve, such as free health care. In many low-income families, they don't deserve medical attention at all if they do. They pay for it all out of their own pockets. Many want to work, and they will accept the hustle and unfair conditions as long as they can contribute to their families here and the families members still in their home country. With 11 million in the United States, illegal immigrants are taking jobs that no one else seems to want, such as field work, house cleaning, and landscaping. Although many believe that illegal immigrants are stealing jobs and leaving citizens unemployed, without the contribution of illegal immigrants, there will be a huge impact, important difference on the day of the normal life Americans. If the United States doesn't approve or accept the migrants from Honduras and Guatemala, they will be sent back to a crime-ridden culture. They'll be lucky to survive. The violence in Latin America seems to be increasing each year, and more people are escaping for reality in their homeland. If illegal immigrants get deported to their homeland, they will get killed. No other country has the same safety policies as the United States within their reach. I personally lived a great life in Mexico. I was born there. Yet at a young age, I had to live the reality of leaving everything behind. My father was a ranch owner and my mother was a housewife. And I was the youngest of all my siblings, so therefore I was a baby. One day, I was at home when I found out that my father had gone missing. My mother did everything she could. The missing person report cannot be officially submitted until 48 hours, and the authorities never really listened. He was found lifeless 3 days later. The Fernandez Rocha family knew that there was something very suspicious regarding his murder. There was a lot of corruption at high levels in Michoacan. My mother, devastated by the loss, decided to move our family to America, seeing that it would be safer there and how America could help us all. We moved the following month, leaving the crime of a small town. There was no one else to take care of the ranch as my father died, so they had to close it down, and they stayed an extended family. None of us spoke any English and had fully recovered from the tragic reality we were living in as we arrived to the U.S. Thankfully, we were documented immigrants, but we weren't complete. By sharing my story, which is now different from present-day asylum seekers, I hope that people should be able to see immigrants from a different point of view, not as immigrants just here to see all the jobs and bring crime and danger into the United States, but as hardworking parents seeking a new life for their children, as people who want to start new lives where they can live without fear, people who are willing to work and earn their right to live in a country that could treat them fairly and give their and their kids a real future, because we are people too. Thank you.
Lance? Somebody really likes Lance and Athena, and I thought you might tell us a little bit about that, Lance.
Oh, it's a customer of mine for a little over 40 years, and she was always appreciative of the things that I've done for her. And she made a donation. She asked me, Lance, you do so many nice things for me. What can I do for you? Can I give a donation? I said, I know the perfect place. So she gave a $500 donation to our club in my name.
Yes.
And I would like to join the President's Club.
Oh, thank you, Lance.
We're going to call it Kathy's Club.
Oh. Thank you very much, Lance.
You're welcome.
Then Vern Green's not here, but he owes me. I know he owes me. And then we've done the spur on Joel, the spur of...
The website recently, our club website.
Yep.
You'll find quite a change in it. And as a part of that, there's a little square that says, click here, and you may be the first one to actually comment on the change in the spur. And I happened to click on it, and I was the first one.
So what was the prize?
The prize is a Dr. Pepper.
Those are pretty spendy, aren't they? Huh? How important was that to you?
I give $50 to the club.
All right.
There you go. Thank you.
Well, this is really kind of fun. I've been looking forward to this. You know you've reached a certain stage in your life when you get to introduce your grandson to give a research talk. You can guess which end of the scale that puts me on. Malcolm's an interesting character. He graduated a year ago from McClatchy High School in Sacramento, was accepted by the University of Pacific, but decided to take a gap year. My generation had never heard of a gap year. So I said, what are you going to do in a gap year? He says, well, I have two things I want to do. He says, one is I want to find out how good I am at the cello without worrying about a damned English theme due on Tuesday morning, which I thought was a very mature answer, actually. And he said, the other is I want to build and fly drones and photograph sites for my father's archaeology company. Well, he put that year to pretty good use. He auditioned into the School of Music at the University of Pacific, so he will go in September as a dual major in liberal arts and music, and he's now an FAA licensed RPV pilot who can fly these things commercially. So I thought it'd be kind of fun to have him show you what he's done over the last year or so out in the wilds. Malcolm, you're on.
I'm Malcolm, like he said. And pretty close? All right, there we go. There we go. I'm gonna be discussing the use of drones in the mapping of archaeological sites and my experience in doing this. So, making maps has been central to archaeology as a discipline for as long as it's been around, because obviously you can't very well record an artifact or a site if you can't explain where it is. And this has been a real challenge for a long time, because for many years archaeologists have been forced to create maps by hand. This is really challenging, for anyone that isn't a gifted artist. Adequately rendering a landscape or a feature is really very difficult. This is a good example. This is in Lassen County, California. This terrain is very uneven, very challenging to render by hand. Here is this is a rock art panel that's actually within this site. And as you can imagine, it would be very challenging to show this rock in any kind of way that would convey any sort of context or detail. And as a result of that, as a result of this challenge inherent in map drawing, archaeological maps used to look pretty much like this. It's kind of crude. It's not, it works, but it's not terribly descriptive. It doesn't give you a whole lot of context as to what is actually happening here.
Possible.
So it's not a great map, right? And this would have taken someone easily over 2 hours to do, because they would have had to use a handheld compass and pace out the distances between each of these tiny rocks and painstakingly draw all that stuff in. It's not that great of a system. So there's a really cool solution to all this. There's a very, very cool way that we can now, thanks to 21st century technology, there's a very cool way that we can create maps that avoids all of this hassle and avoids all of this difficulty. And that is drones, also known as small unmanned aerial vehicles. They can help us in this by taking photos from the air of archaeological sites. That's useful, but a photo is not a map, right? So we need a way to turn photos that we gather from the air into usable topographic maps, or even cooler, three-dimensional models. And that is a very cool technology known as aerial photogrammetry. Basically, the way this works, a drone will fly around a landscape or an object and take a bunch of pictures of it, like several hundred, from all kinds of different angles, from every place above it, and then from a lot of angles, a lot of oblique angles. Gets a bunch of photo coverage of whatever it is that you're trying to map, and then this software takes these photos, calculates the overlap in between them, and builds them into a three-dimensional model. It's extremely cool. I don't really understand that at all, because I don't really know software in the slightest, but it's extremely fascinating. That, the same picture that we were looking at earlier, this site, where was I going with this? This is a model that was created of that same site using this technology. And as you can see, there's just a huge amount of detail. There's a lot of, it provides a lot of context. It's very easy to understand kind of what's going on with the geography here. And this was created in about 15 minutes with a single drone just flying patterns above this landscape. It's not nearly as time consuming as drawing this stuff by hand. This is the drone that we use for this type of stuff. It's actually sitting right over there. It's a commercially available product for about $1,500. It's very attainable by most people looking to get into this kind of stuff. There it is. It's got a camera hanging beneath it on a gimbal, so it's all stabilized. The camera is stabilized. It's very neat thing. Here, so this is a couple slides sort of illustrating how this all works. This is how we tell the drone where to go, basically. So this is a piece of software that we use to program automated flight paths for this drone. It'll fly this grid, taking a bunch of pictures as it goes, and then return to home base. And it does that entirely by itself. It does not need any input from me as the pilot.
You don't have to drive it.
Don't have to do anything. Don't have to do a thing. So here is this is sort of a recreation of one of these flight paths, and it's very interesting because it shows you where it recreates the camera, the photo shoot points. So you can see the drone kind of flew this grid, flew back and forth over this landscape, taking a bunch of pictures, and then it actually flew a couple of circles facing the site inward. So it gathered all these oblique shots that provide a bunch of that aid the software in creating these models. There's that.
Do you use fixed altitude or do you do terrain following?
There is terrain following that you can do, but all of our stuff so far anyway has been fixed altitude. This is by far the most useful part of this technology, is because all of the photos that are taken by the drone are GPS tagged and we know where it is in space. We can overlay things. We can overlay information about certain aspects of the site. We can overlay the site boundaries. We can overlay where artifacts are within the site. So what you end up with is this very detailed, really excellent base map over which you can lay all kinds of information about the site. Here is an example of that. This is a map we created of a site, again, in Lassen County. And these are outlines of specific features within this site. And it's very accurate. It's down to, you can get this stuff down to within a few centimeters.
Are those topographic lines?
They are. Those are, yeah. So this is a topo map. Generally people create one of two things with this photogrammetry software. They either create a three-dimensional model, or they will create, like you say, a topographic map, which is what we see here.
Do you get that kind of precision in altitude as well?
What's that?
Do you get that kind of precision in altitude as well?
You do not. That's kind of where that's sort of a weakness of this stuff.
LiDAR isn't used in this system.
LiDAR is not really, it's not very commercially available at the moment, and the units themselves are incredibly heavy.
Yeah.
So it's not very, I certainly think it will be in the future used on drones, but as it is now, it's too impractical.
Last question.
Yeah.
Have you ever crash landed your drone?
Plenty of times. Plenty of times. Here's I've got just a few examples of places where I've used this. This is in Owyhee County, Idaho. There you can see the drone, and I'm holding the remote, which has, and it actually has an iPad that displays certain flight information, like its GPS position, its altitude, and its ground speed, and all that kind of stuff. What's next? There's another picture. So this particular site, there was a creek, and along that creek was a dam, and this dam failed after a ton of rain, and it basically a ton of rock and debris and all this kind of stuff just tore through this creek bed and destroyed a lot of archaeological sites along the way. So we had to go back and sort of resurvey this area. And we did it using the drone. Here you can see, this is a 3D model that was made of this dam site. You can see this is the creek bed, and this is where the dam used to be. That used to be a dam. And now there is no dam.
Was that a man-made dam?
Yeah. It was very old. It was like hand-laid stone. It was probably, when was that from? Like 30s maybe. I don't know. It was old. But so it completely failed.
Not to some of us, Malcolm.
Point taken.
Yeah. So again, here you can see just how much detail and context is offered by these maps. And this took probably under 10 minutes to fly. This thing just flew a grid over this whole area, grabbed all these photos, and then they were stitched together in software, and this is the map that results.
Question?
Yeah.
Does it download the photos as it's making these maps, or does it store it on
So the drone itself actually carries a micro SD card, so it records all the photos itself as it's taking them, and then you just download those photos and run them into the photo processing software.
How long does the photo processing software take?
This is the other thing. So to fly this probably took only about 15 minutes or so. To process it, because this is very challenging stuff for a little desktop computer, it took like probably 7 or 8 hours to process. Yeah. So that's a little bit of a drawback. But obviously you can do that later. You can do that
Overnight.
Once you're not in the field, which is hugely helpful. That's probably one of the primary benefits of this technology in mapping, in archaeology, is that to draw that hand-drawn map that I showed, like I said, it was like probably at least 2 hours. To capture all of this stuff, to create this, less than 15 minutes. So a huge, huge time saver. And the end result is just so much better and more useful to everyone involved. So it's pretty cool. Here is another little segment of that creek bed that got ripped through by this flood. And here we can see, again, one of the very most useful parts of this is overlaying data about the site, overlaying GIS data onto these maps. So here we have just the standard topographic base map, and then here we have, in blue, you can see these are archaeological site boundaries, and then in yellow you can see those are drainages. So this is very, very useful to archaeologists to be able to take this.
What are your red dots? Sorry.
What's that?
What are the red dots?
Those are artifacts. I kind of forgot about those. But yeah, being able to overlay stuff like this very precisely onto a very high resolution base map is just, it's such a huge step forward from drawing stuff by hand. Here's another one. So in Fort Ross State Park, Fort Ross is an old Russian settlement. There is a cemetery, and this cemetery for a long time has consisted of just these kind of rudimentary wood crosses that marked where there were believed to be burials. But the Russian government actually was interested in sort of turning this into a more formal cemetery. And so we were asked to to survey this whole area as part of the effort to make sure that none of these grave sites were being missed, or there were, they thought there might be some off to the sides or whatever. So this is a model that we created of this cemetery, and this is a topographic map with an overlay of the site boundary and then also all of these grave sites. So this is another sort of interesting application of this.
Did you use ground penetrating radar to verify the site, or did you just go on?
That was the ground penetrate. That was used, yes, and that is how all these locations of these burials are known. Not by me though. That was done by another guy much earlier. But yeah, it's just very cool to see the overlay of all this information onto this really cool base map. So I just sort of threw this in here to illustrate obviously one of the biggest challenges that this sort of stuff faces, and that is like trees. Ground cover can really be a pretty big difficulty, obviously, because if you can't see something, you can't map it all that well, all that effectively. These are just a couple shots from when I was trying to map this excavation site, and it was proving to be a little challenging as a result of the trees. This is a photo of that same site, and you can see how many oblique angles were needed to sort of make up for all of this tree cover. This is another, this is just another, I'm not actually sure where this is from. This is another topographic map that was created using the same stuff on that same site. Let's see what's next. Okay, so what is needed to do this? Obviously, first and foremost, you need a drone that is capable. I think I'll just go over here and show these real quick. You need a drone that is capable of doing this mapping stuff, and that there are many different kinds that are suited for different applications. So you've already seen this, but this is a rotary wing drone, also known as a quadcopter. It can fly in all directions and hover, and it's very good for mapping smaller sites or sites that have a lot of detail. And these over here are fixed wing drones, airplanes these are much better at covering lots of ground very quickly. You can see this one's pretty large. These will cover a lot of ground very efficiently, and because of that, they're very good at mapping large landscapes, huge areas of land. So there's different drones for different sorts of applications.
Malcolm, what are the bigger drones made of?
So actually, that really big one it's made out of foam. It's like sort of similar to styrofoam, but it's like slightly different, a little bit more rigid, a little bit more durable.
So if you crash that one, is it repairable?
Probably. Depends on how bad you crash it. But yeah, so this one's made out of sort of like a styrofoam type material. This one I actually built out of, it's like, sort of like 1/4-inch poster board from the Dollar Tree.
Where do the cameras attach? Where do you attach the camera?
You can attach the camera to any of these in any sort of different way. That one, the drone, this one here, it's got it just hanging off the bottom. This one doesn't have a camera on it at the moment. This one actually has a sort of a port out the bottom, out the belly, where a camera is mounted, and then it flies along and takes a bunch of pictures looking at the ground. Feel free to come check these out. So you need a drone. There's all kinds of those. You need a photogrammetry software, a software that is capable of taking all these images that you capture and stitching them into a useful map. We use a software called PhotoScan. I don't remember, that's one of the more costly sort of parts of this equation. It's not super cheap, but still very attainable for any business that is, looking to get into this. You need, to do this legally in the US, you need a license. And this is very easily attained also. You just take a test. It's like 100 multiple choice questions. It's very easy, and they hand you a license that allows you to fly drones commercially in the United States. Skill, do you need skill? Not necessarily. I mean, it's really the amount of skill that is required to do this kind of stuff is really, it's as much as you want to make it. Like for one of those larger fixed wing drones, it's very good to have some knowledge of flying either model or full scale aircraft. They're a little bit more unwieldy and dangerous, so it's kind of a good idea, I suppose, to have some prior knowledge. But the multi-rotor, the quadcopter, it's a commercial product that you can find at electronics stores or whatever. It's about $1,500 and it's very heavily computer stabilized, so it really doesn't require any kind of actual flight knowledge or experience. So really anyone can get into this is kind of my point. Like this incredible technology is pretty much at anyone's fingertips in a very cool way. And it allows you to create really pretty magnificent stuff that 10 years ago, we could really only have dreamed of doing this so easily. We could not have fathomed doing that for a total of about $3,000 in a few hours' time. So that's just, it's incredible. It's very, very easily accessible, and it's most definitely here to stay in the field of archaeology as well as many other places. That's about all I have to say, but thank you so much.
Yes. Several questions.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Do you have any, what's the accuracy that you have on determining the altitude of those contour lines? Or do the contour lines come from other sources?
The contour lines in the altitude, right. How does this work? You've exposed my lack of knowledge in this area. I'm fairly certain that what happens is you capture all the photos. Do you know how that works?
Can I pitch in a bit?
Yes,
here?
please.
Let me just borrow the mic here.
And let me point out this skill thing that Malcolm has said you don't need any of. Well, I've been trying to learn how to do this for a long time and have not. So there's an example of an old dinosaur. This is the classic, get a young person to do it. But to answer Hank's question, this surface from motion photogrammetry technique that Malcolm's describing is extraordinarily powerful. And it does go to the question Dennis asked about how much vertical resolution. But just decouple it for a moment from the question about where the contour lines came from and realize that if you get enough oblique coverage, not just the facing down kind of stuff, but if you get enough oblique coverage, then with sufficient computing cycles, you can get very good three-dimensional models out of this with, I think, better vertical resolution than we were hoping or heard described there. And you can see when you don't have it as well, you can see those trees kind of look jello-y at the edges and so forth. But then once you have that model, if you calibrate it with other sources, you can extract the digital elevation contours from it, or you can overlay those from other sources, like if you've got good topo maps and that sort of thing. So I think that's at least part of the answer to that question.
Malcolm, that thing is GPS stabilized. What's the nominal stability and altitude? A meter?
Of the drone?
Of the drone, half a meter?
Probably somewhere in there, it's pretty good, it's pretty good. Half a meter or so, yes.
Another question. Is there possibility of getting radar on a drone that size? Ground penetrating radar, so you'd be able to pick up all the objects that are hidden from view.
That's certainly a very intriguing idea. I've never heard of that being done. I think probably the units that are required for ground penetrating radar are quite heavy and large. And I don't know if they have the range required to do that sort of stuff like from the air as opposed to on the ground. I feel like that's certainly, I've never seen it done. I certainly feel like there is maybe potential for that to happen.
I was just thinking
in the future.
Mapping out archaeological sites that you can't quite see.
Right.
Bob? Lynn, and then Bob, you can ask one.
Comment,
We need
comment
to
on accuracy.
wrap it up so we can get our group shot.
All right.
A comment on accuracy. If you think about it, you're making a whole bunch of different pictures, and you do the model, and you get the best fit model. So in other words, you don't need the actual accuracy. You take a whole bunch of pictures and say which model fits us all the photographs best.
As a pilot, what are your rules to make sure you don't run into me?
Right. So that is a very hotly contested topic in the drone world. Ensuring that errant drone operators don't run into you in your Cessna. And, right. So there are the law states that I, as a drone pilot, cannot exceed 400 feet AGL. So
Above ground level.
yeah, right. So that is obviously, that's good, yes, but it's kind of rarely observed, I would say. That's not so good, right? That's a huge thing, is like, how do you regulate this, right? Because these are so attainable, they're so cheap, and without any real knowledge or skill at all, you can fly them around, to thousands of feet, and so it becomes a real issue. But if you follow the rules, which say that I cannot leave line of sight, and I cannot exceed 400 feet above the ground, then I think it should all.
And you're also
work out.
restricted from being too close to an airport.
That's right. So I can't exceed 400 feet. I can't leave my line of sight, and I also cannot come within 4 kilometers of an active runway. So those are kind of the 3 rules that govern how these are operated. Yes.
Just one little quick question.
The other night, there was supposed to be a meeting, Friday night, supposed to be a meteor shower, right, Perseus, is that correct? So my wife and I forgot that there was this deal where I guess the rec department or somebody had a deal, you can go out, watch this. So we went in the backyard, because we have vineyards behind us, and it's pretty dark. And we noticed up in the sky, there, you see the airplanes going by, but up in the sky, there was, it wasn't a star because it had some red to it. It had a red light, like on an airplane, but that thing did not move for 2 hours. It was right in one place. I know it wasn't a helicopter. So I wondered if somebody, but it looked like it was pretty high.
It was Mars.
It certainly very well could have been a drone, someone trying to film something, I don't know.
Maybe they were trying to video the
meteor shower, exactly.
I don't know.
I need to look up for that.
All right, I think we're out of time.
Malcolm,
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Malcolm. So, as I said earlier, he's going to demo probably that quadcopter out there. And so I really want everybody to take this opportunity to get your picture taken. There's a camera on there by the drone. And so we'll all go outside as soon as we can and get our picture taken, right?
Yeah.
Right, okay. And Malcolm, this is, thank you very much. We usually do wine or olive oil, and you're too young for that, and so there's something in there for you. And that was very inspirational. And I think that you probably have an excellent paper already written for wherever you do next. So the last thing I would like, and I know that we've been really looking forward to this. So if you pick a paper ticket out of there, there's no aerial photography required. And then read, it's a green ticket. I have no idea how much is in there. And it is the last 4 digits. 2138.
Yay!
Paul Johnson, okay.